South of the Pumphouse. Boy, oh boy. I'm actually pretty excited to talk about this. I don't know, I'm always excited to talk about books, but I'm really excited to talk about this one today because this ties together my other favorite thing in the world, which would be music, and specifically Les Claypool's music. Les Claypool is an American musician who rose to fame in the 90s with his band Primus, but Les Claypool has worked with a number of other projects. He has done the Duo de Twang, he has done Purple Onion, he has done the Bucket of Bernie Brains. He put out 2 albums under his own name. He did Of Whales and Woe and Of Fungi and Foe. I love both of those albums. I've loved just about every piece of music that Les Claypool has put out. If I haven't loved it, I can at the very least tolerate it. I cannot think of anything that the guy's written outside of his ditties that I don't like. I've always really liked Les Claypool's lyrics. He plays the bass, but he also usually does the lyrics for all of the projects that he helps. So because of that, I was very curious. I was real curious to get into South of the Pumphouse because I loved his lyrics so much. South of the Pumphouse is a ridiculously short novel. It is only barely a novel, really. This thing stands at 191 pages. That is only barely 52,000 words approximately. So it is a real thin read. It's a real quick read for you. Reading the back of the book, it seems to liken itself to the works of both Hunter S. Thompson and The Old Man and the Sea. And Hunter S. Thompson is pretty spot on. The narration in this book is, it can definitely be heavy-handed sometimes, but if you know Les Claypool's lyrical work, then he usually works with a pretty heavy hand anyway. The book likened itself to The Old Man and the Sea, so obviously it tries to liken itself a little bit to Hemingway. However, I feel like this is more like, and I mean this kind of as a compliment, it's white trash John Steinbeck? If John Steinbeck wrote about modern-day poor white people in California getting violent, this is probably not too far off of what we would be delivered, just a better product, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and discuss the plot. In South of the Pumphouse, Ed and Earl, 2 brothers from El Sobrante, California, embark on a fishing trip after the death of their father. Donnie, Earl's closest friend, joins the excursion, much to Ed's chagrin, but Ed is willing to put bad history behind and try to enjoy a day with his brother. These 3 men board a small boat to talk, fish, and indulge in mind-altering substances, but when tensions rise between them, only 2 men return to land. I usually steer towards horror or sci-fi or fantasy or those kinds of things. Not high fantasy, but urban fantasy usually, modern day fantasy. And this doesn't have any of those. This falls pretty firmly in the realm of general fiction. Even though this book is really short, the plot does drag a little bit. The first act and the second act are really slow. This is a character drama. There is not much action that happens in this story. It is very slow, but that's okay, because we're here mostly to watch the tension build between some characters and watch how it's all going to boil over at the end. There are a number of characters in this novel, but there are only 3 that really particularly matter to the plot. That's Ed, Earl, and Donnie. Earl is the oldest brother. He stayed home in El Sobrante, California, while his brother ran off. Life turned pretty sour and kind of bad for Earl. He became a methamphetamine addict. His wife seems to have left him at the beginning of this book. He's clearly impoverished and doesn't have nearly enough wealth to be able to climb out of the hole he finds himself stuck in. Just like the rest of us, Earl was choosing from a limited set of options. Nobody has an infinite set of options for them to choose from. You know, you're not completely free. You're just free to choose from what you have available to you. And from what he had available to him, he almost always chose the worst route. Ed is portrayed as a bit of a soft-spoken kind of guy. He's recently, he was married not too long before the beginning of the book. He recently had a child not too long before the beginning of the book. He himself, he left El Sobrante and went out to, I think it was Berkeley is where he went to, but I can't remember. It's been a while since I read this. I think Ed is who Les Claypool wants us to empathize with and sympathize with the most out of all of them. Ed is the least asshole out of any of them in the book. As a matter of fact, I don't recall him really coming off as much of a dick at all. He's a decently okay person, right? He treats his wife nicely and everything, so. The last important character, of course, is Donnie, the last guy to board the boat. Donnie was Earl's best friend growing up, and Ed fucking hates Donnie. They've had a bad history together and all that, so they just don't like each other whatsoever. There are people in real life that actually are like Donnie, that are just such assholes, and they're just real bigots, and I just hate being around these kinds of guys. I simply try to forget that these kind of people exist because they just make me sad. So we're going to go on to the spoilery stuff now. This is the spoiler section, so don't be here if you don't want that. So first of all, the book opens with a Dr. Seuss quote, "Would you, could you, on a boat?" I love that. So Les Claypool actually did a pretty good job at least misdirecting me. I figured that it was going to be Ed and Donnie that ended up duking it out, and, you know, one of them was going to die. I didn't know who was going to die as I was reading it, but I figured one of them was. And, boo, that was pretty good. He threw it right over my head, and, yeah, it turns out that Earl was the one that killed Donnie, right? There was a huge misunderstanding. Earl deduces that Donnie fucked his wife, so it's like, whoa, he freaks out, and he fucking bashes him upside the head with a gaff, and, like, oh, yeah, it's like, I really didn't expect that shit to happen. I really thought the political tensions between Ed and Donnie was the thing that was going to boil over. But no, dude, fucking turns out that he was just a fuck. Oh, and then right after Donnie dies, they catch the fish, right? You know, they get the big fish, the sturgeon, the huge, gigantic, the 600-pounder, or however fucking, I don't know much about fishing, right? You know, as much as I love Primus, you'd think I would know more about fishing, but I don't. Anyway, they catch the big fish, which is obviously, in my opinion, an allusion to Old Man in the Sea, but they catch the big fish there, and it's just so weird. Like, obviously, they're both out of their mind on drugs at the moment, so, like, sure, they're not thinking the right thing, but they just killed a motherfucker and then turned their attention entirely over to the fish. I don't know, it was weird and funny. The twist at the very end of the book, though, when we find out that Earl killed Donnie for no fucking reason, and that Donnie didn't sleep with his wife. What the shit, dude? Like, that one, I remember that one hit me as I got punched. This was one of the very first, like, just general fiction novels that I tried and cared about any. I didn't expect Les Claypool to be able to pull off a nice little twist like that at the end of the book, and so I was pleasantly surprised. My favorite bits from the book are probably when we jump to the fish's perspective. You can tell that Les Claypool just loves fish. I watched an interview with him at one point. Apparently, he does fishing because it's the only thing that makes him stop thinking about music. So, like, okay, sure, fine, fair enough. But, like, the man just loves fucking fishing. And you can tell when he writes about the fish, that's the only time that his writing is, you know, can actually be called pretty, maybe even beautiful if I'm going to stretch it. You can tell that it's deeply important to him. And the rest of the book is obviously important to him enough to have gotten it written. It reads to me, at least, that the parts written from the fish's perspective are maybe the most important to him emotionally. So, I don't know, that's my guess at least. In conclusion, I have to say that I enjoyed South of the Pumphouse more than I didn't. I've heaped quite a bit of praise on it in this video, but that's mostly just because I'm a Les Claypool fanatic. I like almost anything the man has done, at least music-wise. I even watched Pig Hunt, which was a movie he was in, and I only watched it because Les Claypool was in it. I think I have to give South of the Pumphouse a C+. The prose was often serviceable, and occasionally it was well done, and the pacing was slow, specifically in the first and second act. However, the third act and the drama therein really did seem to save it from being a under-par novel, so I'd give it a C+. Which kind of hurts. I want to give it higher because I love Les Claypool. I love a lot of the work that he puts out, especially his music, but I don't think I can do that for this book specifically. I think this book is going to be most enjoyed by other Claypool enthusiasts, such as myself. If you don't just love Primus and all of the other weird side projects that Les Claypool does, you still might find some value in this book, but it's going to be a lot more selective. Am I going to reread this book? Maybe? I don't know. I read this one a very long time ago, and it's always been on my mind. It's been in the back of my mind, so I think I am going to give it a reread. I can't say for certain, so we're going to give that one a firm maybe. Les Claypool had a huge effect on me. I played a lot of music when I was young. I played the bass myself, like the music that you're listening to right now. I did that. As much as I loved music when I was younger, I discovered that I loved books even more, so I started writing books. Surprise, I'm going to sell you shit. Here I have The Circus, an American fantasy. Within, Penny Robinson finds herself trapped in an enormous, otherworldly circus where capitalism is king, crime runs rampant, and souls are currency. The only chance for survival is to abandon morality and bend to the whims of the circus dictator, or risk her life and break the system she's become trapped in. I also have Portraits in Bloodlines. Portraits and Bloodlines is 23 short stories in the horror, fantasy, slipstream, and science fiction genre, among others. There's a little bit of everything for everyone in Portraits and Bloodlines. As you can see, I have a film collection behind me. If you're curious about that, head over to my wife's channel. She is documenting our collection process. To actually jerk me around, like oh god, that's probably gonna sound terrible.